The morning fog rolled thick through the pine forests of Timber Falls, Washington, settling like a gray shroud over the small mountain town. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar, and the only sounds were the distant calls of ravens and the soft rush of the Cascade River cutting through the valley below. Marcus Webb stood on the porch of his cabin, a mug of black coffee cooling in his calloused hands. He was 34 years old, built like someone who'd spent a decade carrying heavy loads through hostile territory, which he had. His dark hair was cut military short, and his storm-gray eyes carried the kind of stillness that came from seeing too much and learning to hold it inside. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. He'd been home for 3 months now, discharged honorably from SEAL Team 5 after 12 years of service. The transition hadn't been easy. The silence of civilian life felt wrong somehow, like a song missing its rhythm. But he was trying. The cabin helped, the forest helped, and most of all, his partner helped. Marcus turned his head, expecting to see the familiar black and tan form of his Belgian Malinois stretched out on the worn rug by the door. But the space was empty. Titan? His voice carried across the clearing, firm but not harsh. Titan, come. Nothing, only the whisper of wind through the pines. Marcus set down his coffee, his pulse quickening just slightly. Titan never wandered far. The 85-pound Malinois had been his partner for 4 deployments, a military working dog trained in explosives detection and tactical assault. When Marcus left the service, he'd fought through months of paperwork to adopt him. They'd been inseparable since returning stateside. He stepped off the porch, boots crunching on the gravel path that wound through the trees. Titan! Louder this time, command voice cutting through the morning quiet. The forest answered with silence. Marcus moved quickly now, scanning the tree line. Titan's tracking instincts were sharp, but he was disciplined. He wouldn't just run off without cause. Unless he'd caught a scent, unless something had triggered his training, the SEAL's mind shifted automatically into operational mode. He returned to the cabin, grabbed his tactical vest from the hook by the door, checked his Glock 19, and slung a small pack over his shoulder. Water, first aid, rope, knife, the essentials. He studied the ground near the porch. The morning dew had collected on the grass, and there, clear as daylight, were paw prints leading north toward the deeper woods. Marcus followed. The trail was easy at first. Titan's prints were distinct, purposeful, moving at a steady trot. But after a quarter mile, something changed. The prints became erratic, circling, doubling back. The dog had found something, or something had found him. Marcus knelt, brushing his fingers across a disturbed patch of earth. The soil was torn up, as if there'd been a struggle. His chest tightened. Then he saw it. A small tuft of tan fur caught on a low branch, and beside it, a smear of something dark on the bark. Blood. His jaw set hard. Titan, he breathed, rising to his feet. What did you get into? He pressed forward, moving faster now, reading the signs like a language he'd spoken all his life. Broken twigs, displaced stones. More prints, not just Titans now. Human prints. Several sets. Men, judging by the size and depth, Marcus's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm. This wasn't just a lost dog anymore. This was something else. The trees grew denser, the canopy overhead blocking most of the light. The temperature dropped. He could hear the river closer now, a low rumble beyond the ridge. The trail led him to a narrow game path that wound between moss-covered boulders. And then he heard it. A bark, distant but unmistakable. Sharp, aggressive, the sound Titan made when he was holding position on a threat. Marcus broke into a run. He moved with the practiced silence of someone trained to approach targets undetected. His breathing was controlled, his footfalls light despite his speed. The barking grew louder, interspersed now with a low, continuous growl. He crested a small rise and stopped, dropping to a crouch behind a fallen log. Below him, in a small clearing carved out by the river's edge, stood Titan. The Malinois was positioned in a defensive stance, hackles raised, teeth bared. His body was angled protectively in front of something, a dark shape partially hidden behind a cluster of rocks and overgrown brush. Marcus's breath caught. It was a person, small, motionless. His mind raced. Titan was guarding someone. But why? And where were the men whose tracks he'd followed? He scanned the clearing. No movement. No sounds except the river and Titan's warning growls. The forest felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that came before violence. Marcus whistled softly, a low, specific tone. Titan's ears flicked, but he didn't turn. The dog held his position, eyes locked on the tree line across the clearing. That's when Marcus saw them. 3 men emerged from the shadows on the opposite side of the clearing. They were rough-looking, dressed in worn hunting jackets and jeans, faces hard and weathered. 2 carried rifles. The third held a handgun loosely at his side. The one in front, a tall man with a graying beard and cold blue eyes, spoke first. "That your dog?" Marcus rose slowly, stepping out from behind the log. His hands were visible but ready. "He is." The man's eyes narrowed. "Then call him off." "We've got business here." Marcus's voice was calm, controlled, but carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. What kind of business requires 3 armed men in the middle of nowhere? The bearded man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The kind that's none of yours. Now call off the dog, or we put him down." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. The easy stillness became something else. Something dangerous. "That," he said quietly, "would be a mistake." The second man, younger with a scar running down his left cheek, raised his rifle slightly. "We ain't asking again, buddy." Marcus took 1 step forward. "Neither am I." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the rush of the river and Titan's low, rumbling growl. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice dropping into that cold, flat tone that came from years of operating in places where hesitation meant death. "I'm going to walk down there. I'm going to check on whoever my dog is protecting, and then I'm going to decide whether you 3 walk out of here or get carried out. Your choice." The bearded man's smile faded. "You got a lot of confidence for 1 man." Marcus didn't blink. "I'm not just 1 man. I'm a Navy SEAL, and that dog has more combat experience than all 3 of you combined. So let me say this clearly. You have 1 chance to lower your weapons, turn around, and leave. After that, things get ugly." The silence that followed was electric. The third man, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up nervously. "Dale, maybe we should—" "Shut up." "The bearded man," Dale snapped, but his eyes had changed. There was calculation there now, and underneath it, just a flicker of doubt. Marcus took another step forward. Titan held position, but his growls intensified. The dog knew. The mission was about to begin, and deep in the shadows behind Titan, hidden among the rocks and brush, something small and fragile stirred. Someone was alive, and Marcus Webb wasn't leaving without them. The standoff stretched like a wire pulled taut, seconds feeling like hours. The river rushed in the background, indifferent to the violence simmering in the air. Marcus kept his eyes locked on Dale, reading every micro-expression, every shift in weight. This wasn't his first standoff, and his body knew the rhythm of it, the moment before everything exploded. Dale's jaw tightened. His fingers flexed around the rifle. "You're making a big mistake, friend." "I'm not your friend," Marcus said flatly. "And the only mistake here was yours." The younger man with the scar, his rifle still half raised, glanced nervously at Dale. "He's bluffing. No way he's military." Marcus didn't respond to that. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. He'd been in firefights in Kandahar, cleared insurgent compounds in Ramadi, extracted hostages under live fire in Yemen. 3 armed civilians in a forest clearing didn't even register on the scale. But he wasn't looking for a fight. Not yet. There was someone behind Titan who needed help, and bullets flying meant risk to whoever that was. "Last chance," Marcus said quietly. "Walk away." Dale's expression hardened. He raised his rifle, and Marcus moved. Everything happened in 3 seconds. Marcus's hand flashed to his sidearm, drawing and leveling it before Dale could fully shoulder his weapon. Titan, strike! The Malinois exploded into motion, a blur of muscle and fury launching across the clearing. He hit the scarred man, first, jaws clamping onto his rifle arm before he could pull the trigger. The man screamed, the weapon clattering to the ground as Titan's 85 pounds of trained aggression took him down hard. Dale swung his rifle toward Marcus, but the SEAL was already moving laterally, his Glock tracking. "Drop it!" The third man, panicking, raised his handgun. Marcus put 2 rounds into the dirt at his feet. "Next one center mass. Your call." The man froze, weapon trembling in his hand. Dale's rifle wavered. His face had gone pale. All the arrogance drained away. Marcus could see it clearly now, the moment when a man realized he'd picked a fight with someone way out of his league. On the ground, Marcus commanded, his voice cold as winter steel. "Face down, hands behind your head, now." The third man dropped immediately, his pistol falling into the dirt. He pressed himself flat, hands interlaced behind his skull. Dale hesitated for 1 more second, then his rifle lowered. "We were just, I don't care." Marcus cut him off. "Ground. Now." Dale knelt slowly, his movements stiff, then lay face down beside his companion. Across the clearing, Titan still had the scarred man pinned, growling low in his throat. The man had stopped struggling, whimpering as the dog's jaws maintained pressure on his arm without breaking skin. Perfect control. Titan knew the difference between holding a threat and neutralizing it. Marcus kept his weapon trained as he moved forward, kicking the rifles away from Dale and the scarred man. He secured the handgun and checked each man quickly for additional weapons. A knife from Dale's belt, a backup piece from the third man's ankle. He tossed them all into the river. "Titan, heel." The Malinois released immediately, backing away to Marcus's side. The scarred man clutched his arm, gasping. Marcus stood over them, his Glock still out but lowered. "Don't move. Don't speak. Just breathe." He turned toward the rocks where Titan had been standing guard. "I'm coming over," he called out, his voice softer now. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help." He moved carefully around the brush, and what he saw made his chest tighten. A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, huddled between 2 large boulders. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her blonde hair was matted with leaves and mud. Her small hands were bound together with zip ties, and her ankles were wrapped with duct tape. But her eyes, wide and terrified, were locked on him. Marcus immediately holstered his weapon and raised his hands, palms out. "Hey," he said gently. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl didn't move. She pressed herself harder against the rock, trembling. Marcus knelt slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. "My name's Marcus. That's Titan." He gestured to the dog, who sat calmly beside him, tongue out, looking far less intimidating than he had moments ago. "He's a good boy. He found you, didn't he?" The girl's eyes flicked to Titan, then back to Marcus. A tiny nod. "He's been protecting you," Marcus continued, his voice steady and warm. "And now I'm going to help you. Is that okay?" Another small nod. Marcus pulled a knife from his vest, and the girl flinched. "It's okay," he said quickly. "Just to cut the ties, I promise." He moved slowly, carefully, cutting through the zip ties at her wrists first, then the tape around her ankles. The girl winced as the circulation returned to her hands. "You hurt?" Marcus asked softly. She shook her head, though her lip quivered. "Good, that's good." He pulled a water bottle from his pack and offered it to her. "You thirsty?" She took it with trembling hands and drank deeply, water spilling down her chin. Marcus glanced back toward the 3 men, still lying face down in the dirt. His jaw tightened. Whatever they'd been planning, it ended here. He looked back at the girl. "What's your name?" Her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. "Emma. Emma," Marcus repeated gently. "That's a pretty name. How long have you been out here?" "I don't know," she whispered. Maybe 3 days? 3 days. The same amount of time Titan had been missing. Marcus's throat tightened. Titan had found her, stayed with her, guarded her, for 3 days. "You're safe now, Emma," he said firmly. "I promise you, nobody's going to hurt you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I want my mom. We're going to get you to your mom," Marcus said. "But first, I need to make a call. Can you stay right here with Titan for just a minute?" Emma looked at the dog, then back at Marcus, and nodded. Marcus stood, pulling out his satellite phone. He dialed 911, his eyes never leaving the 3 men on the ground. "This is Marcus Webb. I'm about 2 miles north of Timber Falls, near the Cascade River Trail. I've got a missing child, female, approximately 8 years old, and 3 suspects in custody. I need law enforcement and medical. Immediate." "The dispatchers." The voice came back sharp and urgent. "Copy that. Units are en route. What's the status of the child?" "She's alive, dehydrated, scared, but no visible injuries." "And the suspects?" Marcus's voice went cold. "They're not going anywhere." Within 20 minutes, the clearing filled with the sound of boots and voices. Sheriff's deputies emerged from the tree line, followed by paramedics carrying gear. Sheriff Tom Hargrove, a weathered man in his 52nds with sharp eyes and a graying mustache, approached Marcus first. "You Webb?" "Yes, sir." Hargrove looked at the 3 men still on the ground, then at Marcus, then at Titan. "Hell of a scene you've got here." "They had her tied up?" Marcus said simply. "My dog found her first. I just finished the job." Hargrove nodded slowly. "We've been looking for this girl for 3 days. Emma Calloway. Went missing from her backyard in Timber Falls. Parents have been out of their minds." Marcus felt something in his chest loosen just slightly. "She's over there." The paramedics moved in gently, speaking softly to Emma as they checked her vitals. She clung to one of them, a kind-faced woman named Rachel, as they wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. Sheriff Hargrove turned his attention to the 3 men as deputies hauled them to their feet, cuffing them one by one. Dale glared at Marcus, but said nothing. "You know who these guys are?" Marcus asked. Hargrove's expression darkened. "Dale Carver. He's got priors. Assault, drug trafficking, did time up in Monroe. The other 2 are his cousins. We've had our eye on them for months." Marcus's jaw tightened. "They were going to move her." "If I hadn't found her when I did." "But you did," Hargrove said firmly. "And that little girl's going home because of you and that dog." Titan sat beside Marcus, calm now, watching the scene with the quiet alertness of a soldier on standby. Hargrove crouched down, reaching out slowly. Titan sniffed his hand, then allowed the scratch behind the ears. "Good boy," the sheriff murmured. "Damn good boy." As the deputies led the suspects away, Emma looked over from where the paramedics were treating her. Her eyes found Marcus. "Thank you," she said, her small voice carrying across the clearing. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "Thank Titan. He's the one who found you." Emma looked at the Malinois, and for the first time, a small smile touched her lips. An hour later, as the last of the law enforcement vehicles disappeared down the trail, Marcus sat on a fallen log at the edge of the clearing. Titan lay at his feet, finally allowing himself to rest. Marcus ran a hand over the dog's head, fingers tracing the old scars from deployment. 3 days, boy," he said softly. "You stayed with her for 3 days." Titan's tail thumped once. Marcus leaned back, looking up at the canopy of pines above. The morning fog had burned off, and sunlight streamed through in golden shafts. He thought about Emma, about how terrified she must have been, about how Titan had found her, somehow, against all odds, about how the dog had stayed, guarding her through the cold nights, keeping her alive until help came. Some people might call it luck. Others might call it instinct. But Marcus Webb, a man who'd seen miracles and horrors in equal measure, called it something else. Purpose. Titan hadn't been lost. He'd been on a mission. And once again, the Malinois had completed it flawlessly. Marcus stood, shouldering his pack. "Come on, partner, let's go home." Together, man and dog walked back through the forest, their footprints side by side in the soft earth. Behind them, the clearing grew quiet again, the river flowing on, carrying away the last echoes of violence. But somewhere in Timber Falls, a little girl named Emma was being reunited with her mother. And in the hearts of everyone who heard the story, the legend of a Navy SEAL's dog who guarded an angel in the woods had already begun. The news spread through Timber Falls like wildfire. By the time Marcus Webb drove his truck down Main Street 2 days later, it seemed like everyone knew his name. People waved from storefronts. A group of kids playing in the town square stopped to point. The local diner had already put up a banner that read, "Welcome Home Emma," with a smaller addition beneath it. "Thank you, Marcus and Titan." Marcus kept his eyes forward, uncomfortable with the attention. Titan sat in the passenger seat, head out the window, tongue lolling, completely unbothered by his newfound fame. "You're eating this up, aren't you?" Marcus muttered. Titan's tail thumped against the seat. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of the Timber Falls Sheriff's Department, a modest brick building that looked like it had been built in the 1972 and hadn't changed much since. Sheriff Hargrove had called that morning, asking him to come in. Something about paperwork and a formal statement. Inside, the department smelled like coffee and old paper. A young receptionist, maybe mid-20s with bright red hair, looked up from her desk and smiled wide. "Mr. Webb, sheriff's expecting you." And oh my gosh, is that Titan? She was already coming around the desk. "Can I pet him?" Marcus nodded. "He's friendly." "Titan, say hi." The Malinois sat perfectly still as the receptionist scratched behind his ears, cooing at him like he was a puppy instead of a combat-trained military working dog. Sheriff Hargrove emerged from a back office, coffee mug in hand. "Molly, stop bothering the man's dog." "Webb, come on back." Marcus followed him down a narrow hallway lined with commendation plaques and faded photos of former sheriffs. Hargrove's office was small but organized. A desk covered in neat stacks of files, a computer that looked ancient, and a window overlooking the parking lot. "Have a seat," Hargrove said, settling into his chair with a grunt. "Coffee?" "I'm good, thanks." Hargrove leaned back, studying Marcus with those sharp gray eyes. "So, I've spent the dime. Last 2 days doing follow-up on your little adventure. Thought you'd want to know what we found." Marcus waited. Dale Carver and his cousins have been running a human trafficking operation for at least 2 years. Small scale, but organized. They'd identify vulnerable kids, usually from broken homes or foster situations, snatch them during moments of opportunity. Emma Calloway wasn't there first. Marcus's jaw tightened. "How many?" "4 others that we know of. 2 we recovered from a property Dale owned outside Bellingham. They're safe now, being reunited with families." "The other 2? Hargrove's expression darkened. "Still looking." The room fell silent except for the hum of the old computer. "Emma wasn't supposed to be taken," Hargrove continued. "According to what we pieced together from Dale's cousin, the younger one, Tyler, who's singing like a canary, to cut a deal they were doing surveillance on a different house when Emma wandered into her backyard alone. Wrong place, wrong time. Dale saw an opportunity and took it." Marcus felt the familiar cold anger settling in his chest, the kind that came from seeing evil up close and knowing how easily it could have been worse. "They kept her in a hunting cabin about 5 miles from where you found her," Hargrove went on. "Planned to move her across state lines within a week, sell her to a buyer in Idaho. But something spooked them, might have been a hiker, might have been paranoia, so they decided to relocate early. They were transporting her through the woods when your dog found them." "How'd Titan even know?" Marcus asked quietly. Hargrove smiled faintly. "That's the interesting part. According to Tyler, Emma screamed when they were moving her. Your dog must have heard it. He tracked them for over 3 miles through dense forest. When they realized they were being followed by a military dog, they panicked, tried to shoot him." Marcus's hand instinctively moved to Titan's head. The dog leaned into the touch. "They missed," Hargrove said. "Barely. Titan's got a graze wound on his shoulder. We didn't notice at first because of his fur. Vet checked him yesterday. He's fine, but it was close. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He'd known Titan was in danger, but hearing how close he'd come to losing his partner made the reality hit harder. They ran, Hargrove continued. Left Emma tied up, figured they'd come back after they lost the dog, but Titan didn't chase them. He stayed with her, guarded her through 2 cold nights and most of 3 days until you found them both. Marcus looked down at the Malinois, who gazed back with those calm, intelligent eyes. "You were on mission," he said softly. "Weren't you, boy?" Titan's tail thumped twice. Hargrove set down his coffee mug. "The FBI's involved now. They're building a case that'll put Carver and his crew away for life. And they want to interview you, get your full statement. But there's something else." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a playing folder, sliding it across to Marcus. "The Calloway family wants to meet you. Thank you in person. I told them you might not be comfortable with that, but I'll meet them," Marcus said immediately. Hargrove nodded slowly. "Figured you would. They're good people. Father's a contractor, mother's a teacher. They've been torn apart by this. Getting Emma back." He trailed off, his voice rougher than before. "You gave them their daughter back, Webb. That's not something you forget." Marcus stood, the folder in his hand. "When?" "They're waiting at the community center, now, if you're ready." The Timber Falls Community Center was a converted church at the edge of town, its white paint peeling but its spirit intact. Inside, the main hall was filled with folding chairs and the faint smell of old wood. Afternoon light streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Marcus walked in with Titan at his side, and the first thing he saw was Emma. She was sitting on a bench, near the front, wedged between a man and a woman who could only be her parents. Her mother, a slender woman in her mid-30s with the same blonde hair as Emma, had her arm wrapped protectively around her daughter. Her father, broad-shouldered with kind eyes and a close-cropped beard, sat on the other side, one hand resting on Emma's knee. When Emma saw Marcus, her face lit up. She jumped off the bench and ran toward him. "Marcus!" He barely had time to kneel before she crashed into him, small arms wrapping around his neck. He caught her gently, steadying himself. "Hey, Emma," he said softly. "Good to see you." She pulled back just enough to look at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I told them about you and Titan, about how you saved me." "Titan saved you," Marcus corrected gently. "I just showed up at the end." Emma shook her head fiercely. "You both saved me." Titan padded forward, and Emma immediately dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. Titan stood perfectly still, letting her hold him, his tail wagging slowly. Emma's parents approached, and Marcus rose to his feet. Her mother was crying openly, her hand pressed to her mouth. Her father extended his hand, and Marcus shook it. "David Calloway," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "And this is my wife, Jennifer." Jennifer didn't take his hand. She stepped forward and hugged him instead, her shoulders shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for bringing her back to us." Marcus stood awkwardly, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to this kind of gratitude. In the teams, you completed the mission and moved on. There were no tearful reunions, no public thanks, just the next operation. But this was different. This was personal in a way combat never had been. "I'm just glad she's safe," he said quietly. David Calloway's eyes were red-rimmed but fierce. "Sheriff Hargrove told us what you did, how you faced down 3 armed men, how your dog stayed with her for 3 days. His voice broke. "We'll never be able to repay you." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said firmly. "Emma's a brave kid." She held on. "That's what matters." Jennifer pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Will you stay? Just for a little while? We're having a small gathering, nothing big. Just family, and a few close friends. We'd love for you to be here." Marcus glanced at Emma, who was still kneeling beside Titan, her small hands buried in his fur. The dog looked completely content, his eyes half closed. "Yeah," Marcus said, "we can stay." The gathering was exactly as Jennifer had described, small and intimate. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. About 20 people filled the community center, mostly family and neighbors who'd helped search for Emma during the 3 days she'd been missing. There was food casseroles, sandwiches, homemade pie, and the quiet hum of conversation filled with relief and gratitude. Marcus stayed near the edges, uncomfortable with the attention. Several people approached to thank him, to shake his hand, to pet Titan. He answered their questions politely, but kept his responses brief. It was Emma who kept pulling him back into the center of things. She insisted on sitting beside him during the meal, telling everyone who would listen about how Titan had stayed with her, how he'd barked at the bad men, how Marcus had appeared, like a soldier from a movie. He had a gun and everything, she said, eyes wide. And he told them to get on the ground, and they did. The adults laughed softly, but there was weight beneath it. They all knew how close they'd come to losing her. Later, as the sun began to set and the crowd thinned, David Calloway pulled Marcus aside. They stood on the steps outside the community center, the evening air cool and sharp. "I need you to understand something," David said, his voice low and serious. "Before Emma went missing, I thought I knew what fear was. I thought I understood what it meant to be helpless." He paused, his jaw working. "I was wrong." Marcus said nothing, just listened. When she disappeared, it felt like the world ended. Every minute that passed, every hour without word, it was torture. We didn't know if she was alive, if she was hurt, if we'd ever see her again. David's voice cracked. "And then Sheriff Hargrove called and said you'd found her, that she was safe." He looked directly at Marcus, his eyes fierce. "You gave us our daughter back. You gave us our life back. I don't care if you're uncomfortable with gratitude or attention or whatever. You need to know that what you did matters. It matters more than anything." Marcus felt the weight of those words settle over him. For months since leaving the service, he'd struggled with the question of purpose. What did his life mean now that he wasn't deployed, wasn't on mission, wasn't serving? Standing here, looking at a father who'd almost lost everything, he began to understand. The mission hadn't ended. It had just changed form. "Thank you for saying that," Marcus said quietly. "It means a lot." David nodded, then looked down at Titan, who sat calmly at Marcus's feet. "And that dog of yours, he's something special." "He is," Marcus agreed. "He's the best partner I've ever had." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside, Emma's laughter rang out, bright and clear and alive. The days that followed brought more attention than Marcus wanted. A reporter from the Seattle Times drove out to interview him. The local news ran a segment featuring Emma's reunion with her parents and footage of Titan. Someone even started a Facebook page called Titan the Hero Dog that gained thousands of followers within a week. Marcus ignored most of it. He returned to his cabin in the woods, to the quiet rhythm of civilian life. He chopped firewood. He hiked the mountain trails. He sat on his porch in the evenings with a cup of coffee and Titan at his feet, watching the forest settle into darkness. But something had shifted. People in town recognized him now. The barista at the coffee shop refused to let him pay. The mechanic who serviced his truck wouldn't take money for an oil change. Everywhere he went, people wanted to thank him, to hear the story, to meet Titan. It was overwhelming, but beneath the discomfort, Marcus felt something else. Connection, community. The sense that he wasn't just a former SEAL living in isolation anymore. He was part of something. About 2 weeks after the rescue, Marcus received a phone call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Marcus Webb?" The voice was professional, female, with a slight southern accent. "Speaking, Mr. Webb, my name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm with the Veterans Crisis Line and PTSD Support Network. I'm calling because your name came up in a conversation I had with Sheriff Tom Hargrove." Marcus frowned. "Okay. I work with a program that pairs veterans struggling with reintegration with service opportunities in their communities. Sheriff Hargrove mentioned that you might be someone who'd be interested in volunteer work, specifically working with at-risk youth. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What kind of work? We have a program here in Washington called Second Chance Pathways. It's designed for teenagers who've been through trauma, abuse, neglect, foster care situations. Many of them have behavioral issues, trust issues. They need positive role models, people who understand what it's like to face hard things and come out the other side. She paused. Sheriff Hargrove thought you and Titan might be perfect for it. Marcus looked down at the Malinois, who was sprawled on the rug, watching him with those steady amber eyes. What would it involve? Once a week, maybe twice if you're available, you'd work with a small group of kids. Teach them skills, survival, discipline, teamwork, things you learned in the service. And Titan would be part of it too. Animal therapy is incredibly effective with trauma survivors. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Purpose, mission, the thing he'd been searching for since he came home. I'm interested, he said. Tell me more. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in a clearing at the edge of Timber Falls State Park, surrounded by 8 teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17. They were a rough-looking group, worn clothes, guarded expressions, arms crossed defensively. Most of them had been through the kind of hell that left scars you couldn't see. Beside Marcus, Titan sat at attention, calm and composed. My name's Marcus Webb, he began, his voice firm but not harsh. I'm a former Navy SEAL, and this is Titan. He's a former military working dog. We've both been through things most people can't imagine. And we're both still here. One of the kids, a tall boy with a shaved head and a chip on his shoulder, smirked. So what? You here? To give us some speech about how we can overcome anything if we just try hard enough? Marcus met his eyes steadily. No, I'm here to tell you that life's going to kick you in the teeth. Over and over. And there's no guarantee it gets easier. That got their attention. But, Marcus continued, you get to decide what you do with that. You can let it break you, or you can let it make you stronger. That's the only choice you really have. He gestured to Titan. This dog was in a warehouse explosion in Afghanistan. He was declared dead, lost. Everyone gave up on him, but he survived, found his way back. And 2 weeks ago, he saved a little girl's life because he refused to quit. The kids were listening now, really listening. We're not here to lecture you, Marcus said. We're here to work with you, teach you things that might help. And maybe, if you let us, show you that you're stronger than you think. A girl near the back, small and wiry with dark eyes that had seen too much, spoke up quietly. What if we've already given up? Marcus looked at her, his expression softening. Then we start by teaching you how to hold on, one day at a time. Over the next few months, Marcus and Titan became fixtures at the Second Chance Pathways program. They taught wilderness survival, basic first aid, navigation. But more than that, they taught resilience. Titan was a natural. The kids who wouldn't talk to adults would sit with the dog for hours, fingers buried in his fur, telling him things they couldn't tell anyone else. Titan listened with endless patience, his presence calm and non-judgmental. Marcus learned their stories gradually. The boy with the shaved head, Devon, had spent 3 years in foster care after his mother's overdose. The quiet girl, Anna, had survived abuse that made Marcus's jaw clench with barely controlled rage. Another kid, a lanky teen named Jordan, had watched his older brother die in a gang shooting. They were all broken in different ways, but they were all still fighting. One afternoon, during a hiking exercise, Devon fell behind. Marcus doubled back to find him sitting on a fallen log, head in his hands. You good? Marcus asked, sitting beside him. Devon didn't look up. I don't get it, man. Why do you even care? We're just a bunch of screwed-up kids. Why waste your time? Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching Titan sniff around the base of a nearby tree. You want the real answer? He finally said. Devon nodded. Because I was you once. Different circumstances, maybe. but I know what it's like to feel like the world's given up on you, and I know what it's like when someone refuses to give up on you." He paused. "That's what saved me. And if I can do that for someone else, then maybe all the hard stuff I went through actually meant something." Devin looked at him for the first time, his tough exterior cracking just slightly. "You really mean that?" "Every word." They sat in silence for a while, and then Devin stood. "Come on, we're going to lose the group." As they walked back together, Titan trotting alongside them, Marcus felt that familiar sense of purpose settling deeper into his bones. This was the mission now. Not rescuing hostages or clearing compounds, but helping kids find their way back from the darkness. And somehow, it mattered just as much. By the time winter arrived, the program had grown. More kids joined, more volunteers stepped up. Emma Calloway's parents even got involved, David teaching basic construction skills and Jennifer leading art therapy sessions. Emma herself came by sometimes, always running straight to Titan, always lighting up when she saw Marcus. She was healing, slowly but surely, the trauma fading into something she could live with. One evening, as Marcus was packing up after a session, Sheriff Hargrove stopped by. The older man stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the last of the kids pile into vans headed back to their group homes. "You've done something good here." "Webb," Hargrove said, "these kids, they're different, softer around the edges, more hopeful." Marcus shrugged. "I just show up. They do the hard work." Hargrove smiled. "That's what the best leaders always say." He paused. "You ever think about making this official? There's talk of expanding the program statewide. They'd need someone to run it." Marcus looked at Titan, who was lying in the grass, surrounded by 3 kids taking turns petting him. "I'll think about it," he said, but he already knew his answer. That night, back at the cabin, Marcus sat on the porch as snow began to fall. Titan lay beside him, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed. "We did good, didn't we, boy?" Marcus said softly. Titan's tail thumped once against the wooden boards. Marcus thought about Emma, safe at home with her family. He thought about Devin and Anna and Jordan and all the other kids who were learning that they didn't have to face the world alone. He thought about the mission he'd spent his whole adult life serving and how it had somehow led him here, to this quiet cabin, to this small town, to this purpose he'd never expected to find. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the forest in white silence. Marcus reached down, resting his hand on Titan's head. "You know what I think?" he said quietly. "I think we were exactly where we were supposed to be, that day in the woods. You found her for a reason, and maybe that reason was to remind me that the mission never really ends. It just changes shape." Titan looked up at him, those amber eyes steady and knowing. Marcus smiled. "Come on, partner, let's get inside. We've got work to do tomorrow." They stood together, man and dog, and walked into the warm cabin as the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a blanket of grace. Outside, the forest was silent, but inside, the fire burned bright. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus Webb felt like he'd finally come home. The spring thaw came early to Timber Falls that year, melting the snow into rushing streams that fed the Cascade River. The forest came alive with the sound of birds returning from their winter migrations, and the first wildflowers pushed through the dark earth like small declarations of hope. Marcus stood in the parking lot of Timber Falls High School, watching as a yellow bus pulled up. The doors opened, and a stream of teenagers poured out, most of them kids from the Second Chance Pathways program. They'd grown in the months since winter taller, stronger, more confident. Devin was the first to spot him. The boy who'd once been all sharp edges and defensive anger now grinned wide and jogged over, backpack bouncing against his shoulders. "Marcus, you see the news?" Marcus shook his head. "What news?" "They arrested 2 more guys, part of that trafficking ring. FBI tracked them to Oregon." Devin's expression sobered. "They found another kid, brought her home." Marcus felt his chest tighten. The investigation into Dale Carver's operation had been ongoing, spreading wider than anyone initially thought. Every arrest, Every recovered child felt like a small victory against something vast and dark. "That's good," Marcus said quietly. "That's really good." Anna approached, quieter than Devon but with a small smile on her face. "Is Titan here?" As if summoned, the Malinois emerged from Marcus's truck, tail wagging. Anna dropped to her knees immediately, and Titan pressed his head against her chest in that patient way he had, letting her hold him. Marcus had learned that Anna rarely spoke about her past, but she'd told him once that her father had hurt her, that no one had believed her when she tried to tell. The trust issues ran deep. But with Titan, she was different, softer, more willing to believe that not everything in the world wanted to hurt her. "We doing survival training today?" Jordan asked, coming up beside Devon. The lanky teen had filled out over the winter, his frame carrying muscle now instead of just bone. "Actually," Marcus said, "today's something different. We're going on a field trip." The kids exchanged glances, curious but wary. They'd learned not to get their hopes up too easily. "Where?" Anna asked, still holding Titan. Marcus smiled. "You'll see. Load up." They piled into two vans, Marcus driving one with Titan in the passenger seat, and Sarah Chen, the program coordinator, driving the other. They headed east out of Timber Falls, into the mountains where the roads grew narrow and winding. After 40 minutes, they pulled up to a sprawling property that had once been a summer camp. The main lodge stood at the center, surrounded by cabins, a dining hall, and an obstacle course that looked military-grade. A sign at the entrance read, "Haven Point Youth Ranch, opening soon." The kids climbed out slowly, staring at the property with confusion and wonder. "What is this place?" Devon asked. Sarah Chen stepped forward, clipboard in hand, her professional demeanor barely containing her excitement. "This is the future of Second Chance Pathways. Thanks to a grant from the state and some very generous private donors, we're converting this old camp into a year-round residential facility for at-risk youth." Marcus watched the kids' faces as understanding dawned. "You mean like, we could live here?" Jordan asked, voice uncertain. "Not just live," Sarah said. "Learn, train, heal. We're building a full-program education, therapy, vocational training, wilderness skills, everything you've been doing with Marcus and Titan, but expanded. Permanent." Anna's eyes had gone wide. "For how long?" "As long as you need," Marcus said, stepping forward. "The program's designed for teens aging out of foster care, kids with nowhere else to go, anyone who needs a place to rebuild. You'd have your own space, structure, support. And if you want to stay through graduation and beyond, we'll help you get into college or vocational programs." The silence that followed was heavy, with emotion none of them knew how to name. It was Devon who broke first. His tough exterior cracked, and tears spilled down his cheeks before he could stop them. "You're serious? This is real?" Marcus nodded. "It's real. We break ground on the renovations next month. Doors open by fall." Devon turned away, shoulders shaking. Jordan put a hand on his friend's shoulder, his own eyes wet. Anna stood frozen, still holding Titan. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet, Marcus almost missed it. "Nobody's ever done something like this for us before." Sarah knelt beside her. "You deserve it, Anna. All of you do. You've fought so hard. Let someone fight for you now." The floodgates opened then. Kids who'd learned to bury their emotions, who'd survived by staying hard and closed off, let themselves break open. They cried and hugged and asked 100 questions all at once, voices overlapping with hope and disbelief and fragile, terrified joy. Marcus stood back, watching it unfold, feeling something in his own chest threatening to crack. Titan pressed against his leg, sensing his human's emotions the way he always did. This was what purpose looked like. Not the adrenaline of combat or the singular focus of a tactical mission, but this building, something that would outlast him, creating a place where broken things could be made whole. Later, after they'd toured the property and the kids had claimed which cabins they wanted, "I'm taking the one by the lake," Devon had announced, as if daring anyone to argue. They gathered in the main lodge for lunch. The building still needed work. The floors were scuffed, the furniture outdated, but the bones were good. Large windows overlooked the forest, and a massive stone fireplace dominated one wall. As they ate sandwiches and talked excitedly about the future, a black SUV pulled up outside. Marcus glanced out the window and felt surprise flicker through him. David and Jennifer Calloway stepped out, with Emma between. Marcus excused himself and walked outside. Emma spotted him immediately and ran forward, ponytail bouncing. "Marcus! Mom said you were here." He caught her in a hug, lifting her slightly. She'd grown in the months since her rescue, her face fuller, her smile easier. The nightmares had faded, Jennifer had told him. Emma was herself again, or learning to be. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, as David and Jennifer approached. David smiled, but there was something serious beneath it. "We wanted to talk to you about the ranch." They walked a short distance from the lodge to a bench overlooking the property. Emma immediately went to find Titan, leaving the adults to talk. Jennifer spoke first. "We've been following what you've been building with the program. What you're doing for these kids." Her eyes were bright with emotion. "It's incredible, Marcus. But we know programs like this need sustainable funding." David pulled an envelope from his jacket. "We've been talking to some people, other families whose kids you've helped through the program, business owners in town who've watched what you're doing. We put together a coalition." He handed the envelope to Marcus. Inside was a check. Marcus's eyes widened when he saw the amount. "That's $50,000, David said. "It's a start. We're committed to raising more. We want to make sure this place not only opens, but thrives." Marcus stared at the check, his throat tight. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Jennifer said softly. "You gave us our daughter back. Let us give something back to you. To these kids who need what you're building." Marcus looked out at the property, at the kids visible through the lodge windows, laughing and planning their futures. At Emma playing with Titan near the tree line, her joy uncontained and pure. "This is going to work," he said quietly. "Isn't it?" David clapped him on the shoulder. "It already is." The months that followed were a blur of construction and planning. The community rallied in ways Marcus hadn't expected. Local contractors volunteered their time. Teachers from the school district offered to help develop curriculum. The VFW post in Timber Falls donated furniture and equipment. Marcus found himself in meetings he never thought he'd attend, talking about budgets and timelines and building codes. Sarah Chen handled most of the administrative work, but she insisted Marcus be involved in every major decision. "This is your vision," she'd said. "You and Titan started this. Don't lose sight of that." Titan himself had become something of a mascot for the project. His photo appeared in fundraising materials, and he accompanied Marcus to every site visit, inspecting the progress with the same calm intensity he brought to everything. By late summer, Haven Point Youth Ranch was ready. The cabins had been renovated, each housing 4 teens with private sleeping areas and a common space. The main lodge now held a commercial kitchen, dining hall, classrooms, and a therapy center. The obstacle course had been rebuilt with safety features but maintained its challenge. There was a stable with 3 horses donated by a ranch outside Seattle, a workshop for vocational training, a greenhouse for teaching agriculture, and a small chapel for those who wanted it. On opening day, August 15th, 22 teenagers moved into Haven Point. Devon, Anna, and Jordan were among the first, their rooms already claimed and decorated with the few possessions they owned. A dedication ceremony was held in the main lodge, attended by donors, volunteers, local officials, and families. Sheriff Hargrove gave a speech about community and second chances. Sarah Chen presented the program's mission and vision. Emma Calloway, now 9 years old and fearless, stood at the microphone and thanked Marcus and Titan for showing everyone that heroes are real. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood at the front of the room, with Titan at his side, looking out at the faces gathered there. He'd faced enemy combatants, jumped from planes, cleared hostile buildings. But standing here, trying to find words for what this meant, felt harder than any of that. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. So, I'll keep this short. When I left the military, I thought my mission was over. I thought the best years of my life were behind me." He paused, his hand finding Titan's head. "Then this dog went missing for 3 days. And when I found him, he was protecting a little girl who would have died without him. That moment changed everything for me." His eyes found Emma in the front row, sitting between her parents. She smiled at him, and he smiled back. "I realized the mission never ends. It just changes form. And the most important missions aren't always the ones in foreign countries or on battlefields. Sometimes they're right here, in our communities, with the kids who need someone to believe in them." He looked at Devin, at Anna, at Jordan, at all the young faces staring at him with trust he was determined to earn. This place exists because a lot of people decided that these kids matter, that they deserve a chance to become who they're meant to be. And I promise you, we will fight for them every single day. We will not give up. We will not let them fall through the cracks. His voice roughened. Because that's what you do for the people you serve with. You hold the line. You watch their backs. You bring them home. The room erupted in applause. Marcus stepped back, overwhelmed, and Titan pressed against his leg, grounding him. Later, as the sun set over Haven Point and the guests departed, Marcus walked the property with Titan. The kids were in the dining hall, eating dinner and laughing, their voices carrying through the open windows. He stopped at the edge of the forest, looking back at the lodge, at the lights glowing warm against the gathering darkness. Sheriff Hargrove appeared beside him, 2 bottles of beer in hand. He offered one to Marcus, who took it with a nod of thanks. "Hell of a thing you've built here, Webb." Marcus took a sip, the cold beer sharp and clean. "Couldn't have done it without a lot of help." "That's what community means," Hargrove said. "People pulling together for something bigger than themselves." He paused. "You know there's already a waiting list of kids wanting to get in? Sarah told me she's got 40 applications for next year." Marcus felt the weight of that. 40 more kids who needed what Haven Point offered. 40 more lives that could be changed. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Maybe expand, add more cabins." Hargrove smiled. "I don't doubt it." He raised his bottle. "To second chances." Marcus clinked his bottle against the sheriff's. "To second chances." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one above the mountains. That night, Marcus lay in his bunk in the staff quarters, a small room attached to the main lodge. Titan was sprawled on a dog bed in the corner, snoring softly. Marcus stared at the ceiling, exhaustion pulling at him, but his mind still racing. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. The years in the teams, the deployments, the brothers he'd lost. The day he came home feeling empty and purposeless. The morning Titan went missing, the moment he found Emma. Every piece had led to this. Every hardship, every loss, every choice. He understood now what his chaplain in the service used to say, "God doesn't waste our pain, He redeems it." Marcus had thought his suffering was meaningless, but it had made him who he needed to be for this moment, for these kids, for this mission. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Sarah Chen. "First night is going well. Kids are settling in. Devin asked if you and Titan can do morning PT with them tomorrow. I think that means you're stuck with us now." Marcus smiled and typed back. "Wouldn't have it any other way. 0600 sharp." He set the phone down and closed his eyes. From the dining hall, he could faintly hear the kids still talking, their laughter floating through the night air like music. Somewhere in that sound was Devin, who was learning he didn't have to be hard all the time. Anna, who was discovering that trust could be rebuilt. Jordan, who was finding out that grief didn't have to define him. And somewhere in Timber Falls, Emma Calloway slept safely in her own bed, surrounded by family, the nightmare of her kidnapping fading a little more each day. Marcus had spent years protecting his country. Now he was protecting something just as important, the futures of kids who deserved to know they mattered. As sleep finally pulled him under, his last conscious thought was a prayer of gratitude. For second chances, for faithful dogs who refused to quit, for communities that rallied around their own, for missions that found you when you needed them most, and for grace that redeemed even the darkest valleys, turning survival into purpose, pain into healing, and one man's search for meaning into a sanctuary for the lost. In the corner, Titan's tail thumped once against the floor, as if to say Amen. Outside Haven Point, the forest stood silent and watchful, and above it all, the stars burned bright small lights in the darkness, just like the ones Marcus and Titan had become for 22 kids who finally had a place to call home. The mission continued. And this time, it would last forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Was it Titan's 3-day vigil, Marcus's protective courage, or the moment Emma was finally safe? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.